Hello everybody, this is Edgelord and I'm coming with another tutorial for pretty much all the university or high school students that are into programming. Now I usually don't really do this a lot, but I had some request topic on what environment I use for programming, and it's Visual Studio Code. Now I don't really recommend this for like really developed integration and development, but with some little project like how you do in high school or in university, it should provide a pretty good tool for programming. It has a really good auto completion feature, and also it's just in text editor. It's really customizable. But this video is mainly going to be focused on trying to develop using C++. Now, obviously, there are a lot of ways to get all this integrated, but what I use is also WSL. Usually, Linux tools for developing things using uh, C are much better than what alternatives are in Windows. And the only IDE that's really usable, like plug and play, plug and install, is code blocks, but it's not really updated a lot, and its auto completion kind of sucks. So we want to use something which is really much more modular in the sense, and to be much more editable than code blocks. So yeah, I'm gonna show you how I do this and what's my workflow and what are other extensions I use in order to program. So for this, open any browser you want. You search in here Visual Studio. Obviously code. You get in here. You can also go to download, but you need to install it for Windows. You click on here, and you should have it downloaded in here. Now, what you need to do, go in here and obviously execute this. But since we already have installed, I'm not going to install it again. This is one thing we need to do. The other thing is to go into the control panel, go to programs, turn Windows features on and off. And now you need to browse right at the bottom part in here. You need to have virtual machine platform, hypervisor platform, and Windows subsystems for Linux all activated. You should have it ticked. You click OK, and then it's going to prompt you to restart. Now I already have them enabled, so I don't need to, but you need to do this. Then the last thing is to go into Microsoft Store, and it should load up. Now, what we need to search is a Linux distribution under VLS. Now, the thing with VLS is that it's much lighter than your average virtual machine, because this is what we do in order to avoid the overhead that a full-on Linux virtual machine is going to give you. Now, we search for whatever distribution you want, but if you're a Linux noob and you haven't really used anything, you can search for Ubuntu, and you should have an Ubuntu here. You just click on get. I obviously have it downloaded here. You click on get, you install, and it should be done. You are not supposed to run it because you are supposed to restart after doing all the steps, and then restart and then open Ubuntu. Now, what you need to do after this is to search for an Ubuntu. Obviously, I already have something installed here, but we're going to go with another Ubuntu VSL install, and you should see this. It will take a few minutes, but after that, you should be prompted with this. And obviously, if you've enabled the virtualization modules, you should be prompted with typing a new username and a password. Now, obviously, if you've used Linux before, you know passwords are not going to be shown. So, just so you know, please don't think that this is blocked. And now we're up in our Ubuntu machine. What you need to do from here on is to set up Visual Studio. To do this, you're going to need to install the compilers that you're going to use for the C++. And what you need to do now is to type in sudo apt-get install build essential. Depending on whatever distribution of Linux you have, the command should be a little bit different. But what you need to do is to install through the terminal, and that should be depending on the package manager. Ubuntu has apt-get, and the package should be build essential. Now what this does is going to install all the compilers that you will need in order to work with C and C++. You type enter, and everything should be installing and unpacking. It's gonna take some while, but it should be all ready. And now we're here. It all works well. After you're finished up setting WSL, opening Visual Studio Code should look something like this, or either should have a dark theme or light theme, depends what you have it set up. Now it doesn't really matter. What matters is to get this working and having it open WSL installs. To do this, you need to go in the tab where it says extensions, see like some blocks one on top of another, and what you need to do here at search extensions, search for WSL. You should see this extension made by Microsoft. Open any folder in the Windows subsystems for Linux. Now, you'll need this because VS Code does not know how to interface with the Linux distro that you've just installed. But if you click on install, which should be here, you're going to get this installed and up to go. Close this up, and now we close Visual Studio. This is going to be important because when we try to work with Visual Studio, we're not going to do it by opening Visual Studio Code usually. We're going to do it by opening up a terminal and going into the folder where we want to go in order to develop. For example, cd, and if you do mount C, you should be in the C directory of your Windows installation, because VSL is set up on a separate partition than what Windows is installed. So you go into the mount drives and then go into the C path. Now what you need to do is to go into the folder that you know you're gonna work. For example, I want to go in users, my user obviously. We're gonna go into desktop here because it's the easiest to access. Now what you need to do, type code dot. This is going to open code into the folder that you've accessed with your terminal, and you should see installing VS Code Server right in here, which is obviously going to install the necessary components in order to access Visual Studio Code through your VSL terminal. Okay, so once Visual Studio Code Server is installed, you should see a new Visual Studio Code window open up in here. You should also see a warning telling you if you trust this folder. Now you're going to say yes. And then in order to finish setting everything up, you need to go into the extensions tab. You'll see some blocks, some squares in here. Click on that. And now you need to go into search here and type C or C++. You either have the C, C++ extension here, which only does auto-completion. Be careful, this does not actually make the code compile, but this is enough for us. We're gonna go and click on install, and you should see that it's trying to install in here. Now, other extensions that you may like are the makefile. the Makefile extension provided by Microsoft is also a pretty good extension. It does autocomplete for Makefiles. And you're going to see that you have some extensions installed in the local ones, and you're probably only going to see the WSL. And then you're also going to have extensions downloaded in the Ubuntu one. Now, obviously, these two are installing, so let's go into our desktop and go in here, type new file, and here's a new file of C++. Visual Studio should also be able to detect what kind of code, what kind of language you're using whenever you're developing, so this should be enough. Now, the last piece of our puzzle is to go here in View, in the View menu, and then click on Terminal. This is going to open a nicely rendered terminal here, which should have everything you need in order to develop. The instructions here are the same as when you're using Linux, because, for example, this does actually work in here. So you can use whatever commands you want and whatever Linux commands you want, because this is a Linux terminal. Now, for compiling things, I'll need to have this installed. You're probably going to use GCC for the C compiler or G++ for the C++ compiler. Now everything is set up. Let's see and try to install and try to write our first program. So I'm going to type include and see autocompletion does work out of the gate. I also like very much the color coding of this, but this also changes with the themes that you're using. So you do this, and now let's see. Let's do some math. Nicely ordered in here. This is the autocompletion, and it kind of also tells you about what kind of object you're using when autocompleting. For example, this symbol is for structure and much more. But usually the autocomplete that you're interested are mostly at the top. And now this should be our hello world program. And now in here at the bottom, you type G++, name of the file, followed by the flag, line O. This is important because it's going to tell you what name the compiled executable is named, and after that, a name. You're also going to see there is a demo which appeared on the desktop. Okay, and now for the final moment, we run demo. Oops. And as you can see, it works the same. The terminal we just called in and ran demo. We added 3 and 4. We got 7, and this is pretty much it. The installation process shouldn't be that hard, and it does save you and spare you some time, because setting up a full-on virtual machine on something like VirtualBox is going to be much more demanding. And Visual Studio Code also has extensions in order to expand on the usability that Visual Studio has, and it's much more versatile than Visual Studio Code. So that's pretty much for the tutorial. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next videos.